Thank you so much for being here. We're really, really excited to see you in person. It's interesting. Even though it's 2023, getting together in person is still kind of unique, isn't it? Yeah. So we're still trying to figure this out. We're so happy that you're here. It makes such a difference. Togetherness is one of the things that co-ops bring, right? And so to have you here with us, to have you here helping us, because this is something that we build together, really does make a huge difference. Before we get into any of the deck or the slides, I do want to acknowledge a mistake that we made. We probably made a bunch, and we'll make more. But one that we know and one of our owners brought up to us was that when we booked the date for this meeting, those of us that were making the decision did not realize that Yom Kippur kicks off tonight. That is 100% our mistake. We will learn from that. We will do better going forward. But we very, very much apologize to the folks that can't be here because they're celebrating with their families and you know, getting ready for that holiday. So apologies to them. We are recording this. Oh, actually, I should just double check. Good. We're recording this. So future people that are seeing us, hello. But yeah, so thank you for that. Thanks for understanding. Thank you very much to the owner that brought that to our attention. I'm sorry that we didn't catch that. That is 100% our fault, and we apologize. Logistics. We're going to be up here. We're going to be talking for about 45 minutes. Take that information in however you feel comfortable. If you want to stand up and walk around, if you want to go get a snack, you're not going to interrupt us. Don't worry about it. If you want to stand up and move around, if you need to use the facilities, feel free to. Code is 2468. Who do we appreciate? So if you do need to go, feel free to. You won't offend us in any way. One other thing that we're going to do, and I think you probably saw on the screen just before, was if you have any questions, there's some note cards in the back by where Donna and Alyssa are sitting. There's also a thing called Slido. So if you're like me and your handwriting, even on a good day, is hard for yourself to read, if you go to slido.com and you enter the code Chicago Market 23, so Chicago Market 23, thank you, James. You can enter your questions and we'll read those out later. Sonia, one of our lovely board members, is going to moderate a Q&A a little bit later today. So yeah, so we have that as an option for you. Let's go back to me. Let's see where, oh, James is on top of this. Thank you so much. So if you don't already know me, my name is Matthew Ruffey. I'm the board president. More important than any title like that, I'm a Chicago Market owner. I'm a volunteer for Chicago Market. I'm a neighbor right here in the community. I live just a few blocks away from where the store is. And I'm active in a lot of other parts of the community too. I'm an Uptown SSA commissioner. I'm on the Friends of Uplift board. Help to run the farmers market. And just, I love Uptown. That's how I got involved with this. And I think we all have a different story of how we got involved with Chicago Market. But thanks, Steve. It's just so exciting to see stuff like this that brings people together. And so, I'm again, thank you for being here today. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was what Chicago Market's vision is. At the end of the day, this is our North Star, right? It helps us to remind us of what we're trying to achieve and why we exist. And I would challenge all of you, I would ask you, I would beg of you, if you ever see that for any reason we're off of this, we certainly challenge ourselves to make sure that we're looking back at this vision and that any decisions we're making are based on this. But feel free to challenge us as well. I'm going to read it just because I know the screens are a little bit small in case you don't see it. Our vision is a better food community, local, sustainable, connected. We're building a better food community. Powered by our owners, we create and strengthen local food connections that are honest, accessible, educational, and inspiring. We're a cooperative grocery store and measure our success on triple bottom line: people, planet, and prosperity. But more than that, we're a gathering place and a vibrant community resource. So when we talk about things that happened in the past year, or when Dan starts to talk about what's coming up next, remember that this is in our minds always. And if you ever wonder why a decision was made or you feel that we're off track, ask us about it. One, maybe we made another mistake. We're happy to admit it, obviously, when we do, and we can correct it. Or maybe that's an opportunity for us to sit and talk and tell you why we made that decision and how this gets us to this overall path. So talking through today's agenda, we're going to do a year in review. You get to stick with me for that one. Do a little bit of funding updates. Kate's going to come up and do a treasurer's report. She's also going to talk about the farmers market and volunteering updates because she wears quite a few hats. Dana, our vice president, is going to come up and talk about the board election process that's going on. Certainly Dan Arnett, general manager, is going to get up and give a report on advances from the last year, what's new and what's next. We have an amazing guest speaker here, Marty Travis. Thank you so much for being here. Dan's going to introduce him. We'll get into it a lot more later, but for those of you watching on screen, if you skip ahead of me reading the agenda, I understand, don't skip that. He's an amazing person and really embodies exactly what we're trying to build within this food community and what we're trying to do, and we're so excited to be able to partner with him on where we're going. After the meeting, we will go back to these tables. Board members will be around. If you have any questions, feel free to grab us. And then we're going to go down and we welcome you all to join us at the Uptown Tap Room, which is just down Wilson. It's Wilson and Malden. So probably a 7-minute walk, 10 if you walk at my speed. But we're going to be over there for a little happy hour. You can continue questions there. You can always email us. You can do anything that you would like to get us to get information to us, and we'd love to talk to you about it. Again, just a reminder, if you didn't catch it, Slido.com, Chicago Market 23. You can enter your questions. So let's talk about a year in review. So from the location itself, we had some interesting challenges that we had to accomplish as a part of the lease that we have. So if you're not familiar with our building, the Gerber building over there, our landlord is the CTA. And so as a part of our lease, we have certain milestones that we have to hit, and we were really excited that the 2 ones that we had to go through last year, we hit, they accepted, and that was schematic designs that were submitted to them, and then the completion of the basement remediation project. We were really excited about basement remediation. The downside is no one else can see it because it's in the darn basement. So we'll be more excited when we all can be looking through a window and trying to peek through gaps in the paper to be seeing construction upstairs. But those were 2 really, really big things. Kate's going to talk more about the Uptown Farmers Market, but making a move from our parking lot to Uptown Farmers Market and hopefully forever home over on Sunnyside was a big move for us. Moving a farmer's market is not an easy thing to do. A lot of coordination has to happen, and that was successful. And that lets us open up that parking lot for construction and everything else that's going to come up, plus an open store where we're parking there to be able to shop. We continued doing parking lot rental. So we have actually rented out spaces to some community members and some businesses while we're not using that parking lot. I'll be pleased when we no longer can do that because construction equipment is in there, but that'll be coming up soon. And then I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to James and the events team that did so many activations at our building and other spaces. Things like tabling every week at the farmers market. We hosted Red Line Services Art History Series. We had Apnagar's Vaccine Clinic. We did a holiday pop-up market. We had Bowman Gardens in talking about native plants. Event after event, trying to activate that space, not only because it gives us a chance to talk about things, but because that's a great space within the community, and we wanted to be able to use it. We wanted to be able to have the community use it. From a funding standpoint, and I'll touch a little bit more on this in the next couple slides, Chicago Recovery Program, that big grant, we talked about it a little bit last year, took significant steps on that front. Shared Capital Cooperative, major step forward and a great partner in closing on a loan with them. We can almost taste the closing documents from our primary lender. Kate will talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And we still have preferred shares. We have some owner loans. We did some friendly loans with some amazing organizations. All of these things from a funding standpoint allowed us to continue this project, continue moving forward, and getting to the spot where we are now. Community partnerships. We are really, really proud of having the Ownership Grant Program launched, and we have some of our first grantees that are going to be voting and listening to this annual report because they are now owners. If you're not familiar with the Ownership Grant Program, it allows people who may not have the means to actually buy into ownership to have fully vested ownership for free. That comes from some amazing donors and some great partners like Black Ensemble Theater, Nourishing Hope, Swedish Hospital, Voice of the People, and many, many more that are going to help us to get those grants out. We connected with groups like the Independent Natural Food Retailers Association. I got it right. I never get that right. I can practice that 100. We're only going to say infra from now on because I cannot repeat that again, but I got it right. So that and Dan will talk more about that, but that participation not only allows us to have better pricing and access to the goods that we're gonna have in our store, but it provides Dan and then future employees and everyone else a lot of technical support to our project, and they're helping even now. So that's a huge partnership. We joined the Artisan Grain Collaborative, which is a network of farmers, millers, bakers, food manufacturers, researchers. They're all working together to promote a regenerative grain shed in the upper Midwest. We joined a bunch of other groups, and we work with groups like the Farmers Market Coalition, Chicago Farmers Market Collective, Illinois Farmers Market Association, the Uptown and Andersonville Chambers, Uptown United. We work with the Food Co-op Initiative, FCI. And we don't just sit on those calls and listen. We've actually been asked to speak and to share our knowledge. And it's a beautiful thing when we get the opportunity to do that. People get to learn from our successes, and more importantly, learn from our mistakes, hopefully not make them again. But again, all these community initiatives really drive back to that thing we talked about at the beginning, about building a better food community. We're doing that even today before we open. We also made some major changes on the governance side. We thank you all for your feedback, for the votes, for walking through this with us, giving your comments. It made a huge difference in allowing us to strengthen our bylaws, to add 6 new principles. So not only the traditional 7 that are with every co-op, but we added 6 new principles that includes DE&I. So we've added diversity, equity, and inclusion, concern for ecosystems, concern for workers, skilled cooperative management, strategic leadership, and innovative culture. Those are codified in our bylaws. Similarly, on the DE&I front, we continue to try to strengthen those efforts to educate ourselves and then to implement what we learn. And so we added a justice value, again, codified in our actual values as one more piece that we want to strive to. I'm going to read the justice value just so you have it. Many of these things, by the way, will be in the annual report that you'll see very shortly, probably after this meeting or in the next couple days. But the justice value reads as this: our co-op advances personal, structural, and systemic justice for all of our stakeholders. We recognize that many forms of discrimination and oppression exist and harm members of the community we serve. As a food co-op created by and for the community, we are rooted in the pursuit of inclusivity and fostering a sense of belonging for everyone. Now we need to put our money where our mouth is, we need to walk the walk, we can't just talk the talk, but making that change really does good. It does good not just in the now, but by codifying some of those things, putting them into bylaws, putting them down on paper as what it is that we are driving this organization to be, that allows things like this, things that from feedback from all of you, to be a part of the organization well beyond any one board member or a whole board of directors, well beyond any one general manager, no matter how good he is. But it really, it just helps to reinforce what we're trying to build with Chicago Market. Let's jump into funding. In theory, there we go. This is an eye chart, don't read it. We're gonna skip through this really, really fast. The big blocks over there, about the 2/3 of things, this didn't change much. This is how we're gonna use the funds. Leasehold improvements, one of the biggest ones. Equipment, one of the biggest ones. Inventory, absolutely big. Working capital, about 2/3 of this pie is all taken up in that. Really important that we're able to get that grant and to use that for things like leasehold improvements, because that makes this doable. Again, this will be in the annual report. We're not going to quiz you on this later. From a sources standpoint, before I get to another pie chart, you might recognize this picture. You might recognize all these pictures. This was the fun part of the community development grant. We got to go, we got to meet with the mayor, we got to meet with city council and do a whole bunch of things to say that we were awarded this. Then the hard work happened. You have to work with the Department of Planning and Development, and you have to work with the Community Development Commission. We had to work with City Council, and we did, and we secured approval on the City Finance Committee. And so this made what last year we talked about as a hooray moment, and we popped a bottle of champagne, and it was a great day, but it turned it real once we had some of those approved stamps that allowed us to move forward with some of the bank financing, other pieces that Kate's gonna talk about. And so the important part on all these is that it changed the narrative on the sources side of things. Last year, whenever we would talk about sources or where the funding was coming from, you'd often see a disclaimer like visible or theoretical or we think. We don't have to talk like that anymore. We're now talking about this is the source of our funding, these are the dollars. We don't have to round to a 5 million, we know exactly what it is. But these were all really big steps in taking this from just the concept that it was going to be to a reality that we can work against. So again, thank you so much everyone for being here. We'll give you as many answers as you want on these things later. But as far as the funding side of things go, I'm actually going to hand it over to our treasurer, Kate, who will talk to you a little bit more about the finances. So thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. As Matthew said, my name is Kate Grimm, and I am the treasurer and the volunteer coordinator for Chicago Market. For the review of our last fiscal year's finances, I wanted to talk about the big picture. Again, all of the details are in the annual report that you will receive. But starting with expenditures, there were several key expenses over the course of the last year. Including basement remediation, which we talked about before, as well as continued work with Storemasters, who also has our architect of record on things like architectural drawings and finalizing the build out and all of the equipment planning. Now, talking about funding, we have closed the shared capital loan, which was a big key step in helping us to finalize all of our other funding. This tiny little thing that gave us access to a whole bunch more funds. We are so close, as Matthew said, to closing our primary lender loan, which will in effect give us access to all of the funds needed to open the store. And Dan will talk to you more about what will happen once that actually occurs. We also continued to have steady income from parking, which allowed us to cover the majority of our operating expenses. So while that will go away, we're in really great shape moving forward, obviously with all of our other expenditures coming. As you can see, at the end of June, we had more than $1.1 million in cash on hand. And as the project gets going, this number is changing drastically, I would say nearly on a daily basis. And as this happens, we are very closely monitoring our cash flow and our budget to ensure that we are always on track. Again, all of those details will be in the annual report that you will have access to soon, and please feel free to ask any questions after this meeting today. But changing subjects completely, now I will talk to you about the Uptown Farmers Market. So we are in the middle of 2023. We have Steve, who was actually on the committee that helped us to get that off the ground in the audience here today. But first, take a look at those peppers. Those peppers are actually from a vendor at the farmer's market. And before I get started, he isn't here today, so Rick, I'm talking to you. I want to give a special shout out to our photographer, Rick Bear. Rick, yes. Rick was at nearly every single farmer's market. He made several visits, including to see Marty down at Marty as well. He has been to nearly every single Chicago market event, not just this last year, but over the last several years. And Rick is responsible for nearly all of the pictures that you will see in the presentation today on social media. His pictures are just everywhere. So Rick, when you watch this, your impact has been immense on the project, so thank you very much. But moving on to the details of the Uptown Farmers Market, as you know, we opened at our new permanent location on the Sunnyside Mall and are so happy to have found this new home in our community. Sorry, I'm behind on my slides. The location gave us room for more vendors. We're hosting about 24 vendors each week. We have tripled our attendance from when we were in the parking lot. We're averaging about 1,300 attendees every week, and we have actually had a day where we had 2,000 people come through the Uptown Farmers Market. So we've had extreme growth. It's been a really great change to our location. The Sidewalk Social also continued this year, and that was hosted by the Sunnyside Mall Committee. So we have a really great partnership there as well, and we have music each week as well. I think we actually have a musician in the audience today as well, so Scott, thanks for coming. He is also a Chicago Market owner as well. And we also have on-site composting, so you'll see the orange buckets in the back. We have on-site composting through Collective Sources Compost Cooperative, who is now a newly formed co-op as well. So thank you so much for joining us today and at the Farmers Market every week. On to the community corner. So this season we are very proud to continue our community corner participation. We actually have been able to fill that table every week and have quite a lengthy waiting list, so that is great to know. Our market is really just more than a place to come and buy those beautiful peppers. It's become a neighborhood hub where we can meet to talk and learn about what is happening in the community and around our city. And as we move forward to open the store, I can't wait to see how much we can continue that involvement and impact within Uptown and beyond in the whole city. As you can see from the previous slide, the community corner was actually directly funded through a sponsorship. We were very lucky to have several sponsors this year again that helped us to do, among other things, provide free tote bags to patrons when they were walking through the market. We also were able to provide compostable bags, the green ones that you sometimes see at the grocery store. We actually provide those to all of our vendors so they can actually provide those for free, helping them offset some of their costs as well. We were also able to partner a little bit with BioBag, the company that sold us those bags. We were reached out to by several other farmers markets within the city, including Green City, to talk to us about how we were actually able to fund that program. And we were able to partner with those people, make some connections, and hopefully we'll start seeing these bags provided by the farmers market to the vendors at other markets across the city. I really want to thank all of our sponsors, several of whom are actually also Chicago market owners. I'm proud to say that many of our sponsors are also heavily involved in the community, whether that's Uptown or other parts of the city. So we thank you so much for being a part of our market, and you've helped us make so much possible. So I will admit I maybe was a little bit hung up on photos as I was putting this together, and this probably took me the longest to figure out what pictures to actually put in this presentation today. But this is just a small sample of what this, sunny, bright Uptown Farmers Market looks like that I have really grown to love. Each picture shows people selling things that they grew or made with sweat and love, performers singing like Scott, bringing joy and vibrancy to the mall and to the market, patrons shopping and socializing and learning. And this is my chance to say a huge thank you to everyone involved in the Uptown Farmers Market, especially our volunteers, a few of which are here today. So thank you very much. Which is a good transition into volunteering. So as we emphasize every year, we wouldn't be here without our dedicated volunteers. The annual meeting is a great time for us to really be able to celebrate the work that we have done. Aside from Dan, who does a lot, most of everything that we have accomplished to date is done through volunteer efforts, whether a volunteer joins us once or twice, whether they're here every week of the farmers market like Caroline, who is out in the audience today, or whether they're serving as a board member. Each moment spent volunteering really helps to move us forward. And volunteer efforts will help open the largest startup co-op in the country, and that is pretty amazing. And last, I'd like to say a thank you to all of the board members, past and present. Some current board members have been around since the beginning, like Grant, who is owner number 3. To later joiners like myself, I am 1759. No matter the number, each of us have one, and each of you have had an impact on this project. So we thank the board and we thank all of you for everything that you've done for Chicago Market. And then last, of course, is my plea as the volunteer coordinator. We are so close to the finish line of getting the store open, but with that also, it becomes a starting line as well where the job changes and we need to have different focuses as the store is open. So we are always on the lookout for volunteers to help us continue in this journey. We need help representing at Chicago Market tables, events like the Winter Walk, which is a regular event here in Uptown, which is going to be here before we know it, even though it's a beautiful fall day outside today. So if you are interested in volunteering, please reach out. There is an email on the screen. I will be mingling after the meeting, so come and find me and find out how you can help. And that's all I have got, so I will be handing it off to Dana. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Kate. Appreciate that. As a co-op, well, let me introduce myself first. Dana McKinney. I also, as Matthew said, like to say my primary job here is owner number 872, but I'm also on the board of directors and serve as the vice president of the board. And I've been heading up our nominating committee this year. So as a co-op, our right and our responsibility as owners of a co-op is to elect from our membership a board of directors to provide the strategic direction and the guidance for the organization. And I say organization specifically rather than using the term store, because as a co-op, we are more than a store. All of the work that we do and all the connections that we do out within the community and making the store kind of our economic engine, but also that community hub that you've heard us talk about, that takes a lot of strategy, a lot of direction, a lot of guidance. In addition, we also oversee our general manager. As a board currently, we are a working board. So when Kate was talking about all of those volunteers, I think the board members get an extra little gold star as a volunteer because we are doing a lot of the work of the co-op right now through committees that also include additional volunteers and things of that sort. But we are actually the ones that are running the marketing and running the operations with Dan's guidance, running the funding, running all of the things that we have to do as an organization to move us forward. Now, we will probably be a working board pretty much through the first year of operation. It takes a lot of time to hand off operations over to the general manager and the staff that he is going to be hiring for our store. And it takes some hand-holding. It takes a transition of that vision that we've had, the strategy and the idea that we have. We've done that for the past 2 years with Dan. He's got it. He's got it better than anyone I ever know. If you're going to give the keys of the car to someone to drive it, he is the person that we want to have driving our car. But we will transition eventually then into a governing board, which, as Kate said, is just a new starting line. We end one thing and we start something different. And so governance and governing is one of the things that we'll be focusing on a lot more going forward as a board, developing our board calendar and things of that sort. We already have policies in place for policy governance, which is the way that we govern, and we also have, as you know, our bylaws and things of that sort in place, which also provide some strategic guidance as well. But we are all volunteers, most with full-time day jobs, so doing board work on top of that just takes an extra bit of thanks from all of us as owners. So as the head of the nominating committee basically consists of our organizational development committee and that team and our GM, and we work on recruiting and then informing potential candidates. What does it mean to be on a board? What does it mean to be a working board? What is the time commitment? What are the skills we're looking for? We have a lot of things like that we do. I typically have a one-on-one conversation for about an hour with each and every candidate that is interested in running for the board. After that point, they decide, do I want to do that? Do I really want to commit to that? And if they do, they answer some candidate questions that I provide to them. The nominating committee then looks at all of these candidates and presents a slate of candidates to the board for approval. And that's what you saw in the various emails and newsletters that went out, is our slate of candidates. And then from that slate of candidates, we as owners elect the board of directors. Now, this year we have kind of a unique situation. We had 7 candidates. 1 candidate dropped out at the very last minute, so we actually have 6 candidates and 7 open seats. So there is 1 empty seat. That means all of our candidates are currently running unopposed or uncontested. But we are still doing elections to make sure that everybody on that slate does get at least 1 vote and is elected, which is per our bylaws. The polls did open actually on Friday at midnight in the morning. So they will close on Thursday, the 28th at 11:59 p.m. So we've got the 1 week to vote. We're in the middle of it. So this is my plea to all of you. If you haven't gone and found that email and you're an owner of record in your household, please go look for that. If you don't see it, feel free to email us at info@chicagomarket.com or .coop. But we want to make sure that we get out the vote and that everybody does vote. The polls close on Thursday the 28th. We'll have our election steward, who is one of our owners, Malcolm Haar. So thank you very much, Malcolm, for being our election steward again this year. He will tally the votes, have them checked by, and actually I think I should be moving slides forward. I have them in wrong order here. He will be confirming the votes on our electronic voting system and having them confirmed by another member of our ownership as well. Becky is also going to be the confirmation owner at this election. And then we will inform the candidates that they have been elected on Saturday the 30th, so the tally happens on Friday. And then the first new board meeting is actually on Monday, Monday the 2nd of October. So we do have to kind of squish all of our voting into a week in order to have our board members present for that first board meeting. I did want to mention a couple of things because in our DE&I efforts as a board, we are trying to not just raise our own awareness, but raise our ownership's awareness of how we are diverse or not in our board. So the current slate of candidates that we have identify as 67% white, 33% people of color, and we have a 50-50 split between male and female. Those are the only demographics at this point in time that we are actually tracking. But as part of our DE&I efforts, we are going to be continuing our work around diversifying the board further and making sure that we also have voice and representation from our community in the organization. So I'm going to back up a slide because what I would like to do is have each of the candidates that are here introduce themselves and just say one statement about why they are excited for our co-op in the upcoming year. And I'll go first. So my name is Dana McKinney, owner 872, and I've been on the board for the last 2 terms, so I am super excited to be running in the term that we're hopefully going to have doors open, and I can be on the board when I get to shop and visit with all of you in the aisles. So I'm very excited for doors on the store and for us to actually be open. I would like to invite Kate up to introduce herself.
Hello again. Again, my name is Kate Grimm. This would actually be my 2nd term on the board if I am elected. And I think the thing I'm most excited about is obviously getting the doors open, but just continuing the work that we have done. It's really become a labor of love. I love working with the farmers market and working with all of the volunteers and would love to just continue that journey.
And then Matthew, would you like to come up and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Matthew Ruffy. I'm so excited to be a part of this. And for me, it's interesting because it started as, if I'm being totally honest, a little bit of a selfish endeavor, right? I want this store in my community. I want to be able to shop here. And for all the love and all the things I think this brings to it, I think I have a lot of knowledge and will do well. And it's about, really making this store happen. So hopefully you'll allow me to continue to serve as one of your board members. If I could, Anthony, who was unable to be here today, did just send a quick note, and he apologized. So this is Anthony Todd. So he just wanted to let everyone know that he's been a part of the Chicago Market Board of Directors since the initial board. Is really excited to stay involved. He didn't say this part, but he's our legal mind as well. So it's very, very helpful to have him on the board. But he's passionate about the project and absolutely looks forward to continuing to serve if you'll allow him to. So thanks, Dina.
And then we also have Sonia running for the board as well, and she has her own microphone there, so I will let her speak from there.
Hi, my name is Sonia Lewis. I am so proud about the Chicago Co-op Market opening up here in Chicago. Born and raised, we haven't had one before in this history that I could think of besides the Hyde Park one. And it's a very small co-op for a little store. But I worked with Dan Arnett at Central Co-op for 3 years. And I saw the amazing transition that our co-op went through being in the red into the black within a year's time. So I'm so excited to work with him again, along with everybody else on the board, to make sure that Chicago Co-op starts off on the right foot.
Thank you, Sonia. There's also one other additional board member or board candidate who is running for the board for the very first time, and his name is Malika Dita. He goes by Dita. So Dita is unfortunately unable to be here. He is the owner of a business in our community, Gobez Coffee, and he is actually on a business trip in Ethiopia buying coffee and working with some of the farmers there. So very exciting work that he is doing, and he is very excited to be running for the board and bringing a new voice and a business owner voice also to our board. So those are your candidates for the board. Please go out and read the candidate statements. They were linked in both our newsletter as well as they are on the news section of our website. So if you go to chicagomarket.coop and you click on news, the first article that should show up would be all of the candidates with their candidate statements. We have a series of questions that we ask every candidate to answer, and you can learn a little bit more about them through that. So I highly encourage you to do that. And with that, I think I am passing it over to Dan.
Hello. It's great to actually have an in-person meeting again. It's been a while since I've been to one of these, so thank you all for coming to this one. We're going to have about 10 minutes maximum for this so that we can get over to our special guests, but I'm going to spend some time telling you a little bit about what's happened, what kind of things have changed since we communicated last, and really what you can expect going forward. And I guess I got to use this little clicker to move through. Uh-oh, am I going the wrong direction? Maybe. Well, oh, I am? Okay, well then there we are. Okay, so let's just jump into it. This past year, a lot of things have happened. You heard a little bit about basement remediation. We call that pre-construction. It's not really the principal construction, but it's really important. It was part of our milestone, and it's real activity, and it frankly is about a six-figure project. So this is serious work. It's a sign that your co-op is not just a fantasy when you're spending those kind of funds and doing that kind of work. You clearly intend to open your store. We have been working on architecture and engineering and store planning, and that's taken a little bit of time to get really dialed in. And sometimes people will say, boy, this co-op has taken forever. It's like 10 years. But two things about that. One, 10 years right now is average to go from conceiving and organizing to opening. So we're going to open right about in the average or mediocre zone of timing. But we have the most technically challenging project I've ever seen, and I've done this for about a quarter century. So I think that's actually a big win. But that's, we want to be quick, but we don't want to hurry, and we want to make sure that our design is right and that our store can be very successful. And all that work's been going on with store masters and other partners and consultants along the way, and I think it's been really, really fruitful. Joining all the organizations that you heard earlier has been really important. Infra, which is itself a cooperative, so we're a member of multiple co-ops as a co-op now, so that's pretty great. But it's a significant thing that we're in, and I'll tell you why. Infra was founded back in about almost 20 years ago, and they never allowed startups and they never allowed co-ops. They were really for independent small and medium retailers across the country, and they changed their rules. So all of a sudden the first startup co-op to be admitted is us. So it's a pretty big thing, and there's already been several other cooperatives joining in. So I think this is an important thing for that system, and it's really great for us to be able to get access to all the great resources they have in the manner we have. This stuff's really tiny, but I'm trying to make it out so I'll stay on task here. One of the things that you're going to hear more about has been just really developing a supply chain, and we'll talk about that with Marty Travis a little bit. But what we don't want to do is just open a milquetoast type. It's a food store and it's a co-op, and it's great, but it's not transformative. It's not building the kind of relationships and connection to our food. It's not really having that kind of impact on changing the systemic problems that are leading to so many of the social and environmental and economic outcomes that we may find to be beneath what is possible. And so to a good degree, you're going to hear more about this on the next slide, but we're engaged in developing our own supply chain to quite an extent. So it's not just saying here's what's available, it's saying here's what's possible, and if we have to make it, we will, which I think is a whole different approach to building a food co-op, a hopefully it works out really well. And of course, we've heard about the Capitol, but I would say that I've done this. I've been on the board of national level organizations overseeing billions of dollars worth of food co-ops, and I can tell you that I have never seen any startup food co-op in the space for specifically a store raise anywhere near the funds that we have. So that's pretty amazing considering so many people thought it'll never happen, right? So what are the takeaways? The biggest one here is there's three big foundational things: site, talent, and capital. And you knew that we had the site, and our board had the wisdom to pick a really good one. That it might be hard to vision as a store at first, but that store the site has really great potential. And of course, they asked me to come manage it, and I said yes. But now we are on the cusp of having all the money too, so we have all the ingredients to make this thing happen. So you heard this before, but it's true. We are on our way, which is pretty great. So what's new? A couple of things. I talked about the supply chain a little bit. It's one of the things where we don't want to just have some token local items or say, but we try when possible. We're going to root this business in local businesses, farmers, ranchers, producers. We're going to help incubate small businesses. And it's not something that's on top of the normal functioning store. The other stuff might be layered on top of that. So for us, this is a driving motivation, and we'll hear from Marty a little bit about some of the things we're doing to develop that. But when I say we aim to be the most locally oriented supermarket in the history of the country, I do mean that. And I think that's your fault for visioning all these great things early, and I took them very seriously. So I say, let's take them to their logical conclusion if we can, right? A couple other things. In order to drive this local and sustainable, one of the things we've figured out is whole animal butchery is actually really important, and it seemed difficult to do or impossible. And every industry expert told me this is no way to do it. And my instinct was this is not even remotely possible, and we gave up on it. But there's a little part in the back of my brain that kept saying, yeah, but you're still going to do it. And I'm like, no, this is crazy. You're going to end up, it's going to be a boondoggle. So I've talked to some other people, and if you've seen at Cut Once at our nice Uptown Farmers Market, and you've met Jacob there, Jacob's been working with me, and of course Scott Gurka from Store Masters. And I just challenged that group with, is it even something that we could consider, and does it even make sense? And I didn't see a pathway, but together we absolutely have figured it out, and it is going to happen. So we're building the foundational pieces there, and in working with down at the farms and Marty's group, we're going to make that reality. So that's another thing that's different. So you're recapturing a piece of vision that has not been pulled off by any food co-op, to my knowledge, ever. Some other things, let's see, because I'm going to have to speed up a little bit. I think when we talk about these trusted partners, who are they? Well, I'll give you an example, because there's so many I can't go through them all. But I really wanted to say, for our drink station, where we have espresso drinks and coffee drinks and all that kind of thing, how can we make this truly special? I mean, we want it to be fair trade, and we want it to be, something that's really uncompromising, but it's also got to be designed really well. And I'm pretty good, but I talked to a fellow from Metropolis Roasters, their CEO, Tony Dreyfus, and I said, would you take a look at this? So he said, sure. Pro bono, he's been helping with every single piece of equipment and every piece of design. And we sat out there at his roastery and sketched things out and talk, and we've come up with a really great plan. But that's an example of someone who's stepped up when I'm looking at how do we develop this all local and regional beer program. Michael Roper from Hopleaf is helping make those connections. Like we're talking with people that really know what they're doing, cream of the crop in so many different disciplines to help make this really work, and the community is actually responding. So you're going to get something that's not just like a plug and play, here's how you stick a food co-op format into your community. This one is emerging out of the urban environment in which it's situated. So I think that's really pretty special. There's lots of other things on there, but I'll make those available later because I'm going to have to move on. I always misjudge my time. I thought I could do it in 5 minutes. I can't even do it in 15. But you've seen this before. You've seen some of the things. I would just say of note, a couple of things. We have made a few adjustments that'll show up in some things you're going to see soon. One is reorganizing the meat and seafood area so that we can accommodate the whole animal butchery. And this is going to include some amount of wholesaling program, because this is one of the ways we can get the volume to do this properly and to be able to help our farmers. And if you go out, and I've been out to a lot of different farms lately that are raising, whether it's pigs or cattle, goats, sheep, you name it, trying to get emu. I'm still waiting on that one. I think we would do great with that. But they always have the same kind of issues with processing and costs. And it's important for us to say how we can be a valuable resource and a partner to these people that are growing our food, because right now they don't have a certain future. The way the system's set up wasn't designed. It was probably designed to squeeze all of them out, if you really look at the way it's built. So we're going to have an answer, at least for some of these families. And there's also a couple of dry agers in there. I wasn't going to bring it up, but we are going to dry age things. It's going to be pretty fantastic. And there'll be a couple of small tweaks in produce, because turns out our volume is going to exceed what that cooler will hold. So I'm going to add a little bit more refrigeration, but otherwise it's pretty stable. What's next? That's your favorite part, isn't it? What's next? Like, build the thing. So here's what's next. We've got to get our permits issued. That's what we're working on right now. If things go really well, we could have them before Thanksgiving. If they don't, it'll be after that. It's kind of out of our hands, but we are delivering rock solid plans that have been vetted and have gone through so many different agencies already. I think we should be in good shape. But whenever that ends, then we jump into principal construction. We're going to start as soon as possible. We've got a great team of people. Our contractors are all sorted out. We'll be able to really start blowing up our public relations and communications, because that's something that we've held back a little bit, because with the uncertainty, you don't want to say, and get really excited, but who knows, when's it coming? So once we've got some certainty, we can start cranking that out. It's very important to get the timing right. There's another thing on here. It says volunteer opportunities. We heard about that from Kate earlier. One of the things that I think is so important in food co-ops is that sense of connection. The fact that you have a relationship with owners in your community, and a relationship with your co-op, and your co-op adheres to your market reasonably. But the thing that makes all that strong is active participation. And the more people that do more, even little things, if you spend 10 minutes given some time, it makes a big difference to the strength of the community. And we're going to intentionally develop more and more opportunities as we go along to try to include as many people as possible, so you can say years down the road, I helped build that thing some way or another. So hopefully you'll find an opportunity that's enriching and fun, and be a part of the story at a different level than you might otherwise be. I'm going to sneak on down through here and just say, supply chain partners. There's going to be an intense amount of work there, because it turns out farmers don't just run vegetables off an assembly line on demand. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time. So we're going to try to figure out our volumes and things with all these suppliers, so that they're ready for us and we're not just a disruptive influence creating chaos in their lives. So we're going to try to create some sense of certainty and anticipation there. We will be hiring. There will be job fairs. There will be all kinds of communication coming out as soon as we can close with the bank and get going. We'll start to plot out exactly how and when each role is filled. But there will be, over the course of the next year, quite a few. So one staff member is going to be supplanted by like 80. So I can't wait, because it's a lot more fun to have a team to work with, and frankly a lot easier to have people that are better than you are at a lot of disciplines to work with. So that's going to be really great. And then we'll take about a month. Once the principal construction, after about 7-8 months of that, we'll take about a month to get your store ready and get it open. So sometime late summer, we expect to be open. And that's a pretty remarkable thing for what is the most technically challenging and sophisticated co-op I think anybody's ever seen. And a couple of things I didn't mention that I'm going to say real fast. It's not just that we're building the supply chain as a cool store. There's touches in the technology that are going to allow unprecedented levels of transparency. If we get this right, we have some people from a particular worker co-op who are going to help us make that real. I think it's pretty fascinating to have group of people that already have familiarity with our co-op, who have the technical skill to help us realize some things that really will be industry leading, not just food co-ops. We're going to build something, if we can, and I think we can, that is absolutely unprecedented and gives so much more credibility to our market and so much more market opportunity for our farmers and producers that it's really worth it. So the takeaways there, a lot of stuff's about to happen. Over the next 10, 12 months, it's going to be wild, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope you guys are ready for that. So that's that. So we've got our guest speaker, and I'm going to get him up here because I've probably taken a few minutes more than I should have. So I'm not going to give you an elaborate introduction because he's going to say in his own words a few things, but I would just say, how many people have seen the movie Sustainable in here? Got a few? Okay, so now I'm going to issue some homework. I'm going to go into my graduate professor mode here. I would love to be able to ask that question at some point in the future and see all of your hands up. This is one of the most important films I think I've seen in the last decade. And it specifically dials in on local agricultural systems and challenges and opportunities and the hope that's in there. So the same reasons you're in here today, I think this movie touches on those things. And the protagonist of this documentary or docutainment, I'm not sure what I would call it as a genre, is with us today. And he's a farmer, and he's a guy who does aggregation and distribution, but more importantly, he's a visionary who absolutely is committed to building a better food system, and thank God he's here helping us to be part of that story. So I'm going to bring up Marty Travis, and then we're going to have a conversation, okay? Very good. All right.
Hello, everyone.
So I guess we'll just get started, but just tell us a little bit about your story. You know, why do you do all this, and how did it come about?
Well, I didn't start out to be a farmer. I built furniture, shaker reproduction furniture, for about 35 years, and did work for Oprah, for the White House, the Smithsonian, Macy's, shops in London and Tokyo, furnished the executive floor of the Blue Cross Blue Shield building here in Chicago. In that period of time, my grandmother passed away, and basically I got left with the family farm of 160 acres, about 40 acres of woodland. We recreated some prairie, pasture, and such and such. In another 7 years, that farm will be in our family for 200 years. So my grandkids are now the 9th generation to live on that farm, which is way cool. But back in the early 2000s, my wife, Chris, said, so, you've been doing all this furniture building forever. What would happen if a doctor told you couldn't do it anymore? You're perfectly healthy, but what would you do? I said, oh, I don't know. We've got this cute little farm here. Maybe we ought to do something with it. Oh, my goodness. And during that same period of time, we also saw so many young people leaving our community, leaving their families' farms, going off to college, and then going somewhere else. And their parents were telling them, well, we don't farm enough to make it viable for an income for you too, even if they farm 3,000 or 4,000 acres. That seemed kind of messed up. So we got invited to a Chef's Collaborative meeting here in Chicago in the early 2000s and began selling wild ramps, wild leeks, to a number of chefs. At the end of our first season, they all said, well, what else do you have? And we didn't have anything else. But we said, well, what do you want? And we realized in about 5 minutes that we could not provide everything to all of those restaurants, and we still can't. But we envisioned a community of young people, giving them opportunities. So by 2007, we had created this little group of farmers that we were doing the marketing and delivery for into the city. The majority of those 25 farms were under the age of 18. They didn't have license. Many of them were like 14, 15 years old. But collectively, we had one farmer in particular that was providing Rick Bayless's Frontera restaurant with 800 pounds of tomatoes every week. And the poor kid, when he graduated high school, had $120,000 in his savings account that he had made during his high school years, gardening. That got a lot of kids' attention. And so we've continued to grow and grow and grow. And actually, in the last 2 days, I've signed on 2 more farmers, and probably in the next month, we will be at or over 90 farms now in our collaborative effort. And we're way excited about that. And so my job went from, yes, learning how to farm, but also teaching others how to farm in ways that are compassionate to the planet, to the community that we supply food to, and how to help them understand how to be profitable and manage expenses and manage income. And so now every week we have 2 refrigerated trucks here in the city delivering on Wednesday, 2 downstate on Thursday. We deliver 50 out of 52 weeks a year. We usually give the farmers a break on Christmas and New Year's, but I doubt that'll happen this next year. But it has just given so much hope to so many farms. And we've brought back millions of dollars into our local community. We rush up here and take all this food and spread it out around the community, or grab the checks and come back and then spread them around the community in our town. But we have amazing farmers and we have amazing customers, and we're excited. I've been working, I think the first board meeting that I went to for Chicago Market was 8 years ago. So I've been an advocate for you all, for our farm community, for a long time, and to see this getting really close is way exciting. That's a longer version than what I should have said, but thank you.
So one of the things about your system that I found really interesting, it's not just any food. You really are focused on regenerative agriculture. And that's a term we may hear, but it's like, well, what is it? So if you could help us understand what regenerative agriculture means and why it's important to your mission and why we should maybe support that and care about it.
Are any of you familiar with the term regenerative ag? Are more of you familiar with the term sustainable ag? Okay. Sustainable ag is one of those things that we all try to put labels on things, I guess, don't we? Sustainable ag means trying to not make it any worse than what it is, right? And to sustain and such and such. When we think about sustainable ag, that doesn't necessarily mean leaving it better. It's sustaining a system, not making it worse. When we think of regenerative ag, and it's not the difference between degenerative or regenerative, but regenerative ag in my mind is that we are doing our best to regenerate the soil, regenerate communities, regenerate people, their souls of who they are, and how we get to a place where we can leave we can lead and leave things in a better condition than when we started. And so a lot of what we also do within our group is do a lot of education, a ton of education, and soil health, plant health, farmer education, mental health, all of those things. And so creating a regenerative farm is one piece of that. But we're also trying to create a regenerative supply chain so that we're putting back into, I would like us to get to the point where we can offer many more benefits to our farmers, whether it be health insurance or a rainy day fund. Some of them have in the past had commercial applicators spray herbicides on their crops and they would lose everything. That's really tough because most of the time in our line of agriculture and food farming, we don't get the same kind of insurance that the big guys get. Mm-hmm. And so if we're able to create a multiple thousands of dollars in a rainy day fund, that would be huge. And I've had success in getting some of our farmers compensated for 3 years worth of loss of product. But that's a hard thing to get through. So there's ways that we can create a better system, and doing it through a cooperative, doing it through collaborative efforts is huge.
And obviously, the nutritional properties of the food is accelerated by what you're doing, the ecological health, clearly. But one of the things you touched on that sometimes doesn't get the same kind of attention in the media was social issues. And could you speak to a little bit to just, a lot of times we think, oh, there's farmers. Well, they're all like Marty. It's like farmers of this age and this background. And I think it's important to us, we heard about the justice value and the DEI value. How is that informing the way you're growing your system? So I think people like to hear about that too.
Yeah, so there are intentional things that happen, and then there's things when you begin to put intention toward it that happen, right? When you begin a perpetual motion machine and put it in motion, things happen. So our farmers, we have veteran farmers, black farmers, Asian farmers, LGBTQ farmers, lots of women farmers. We have folks ranging all over the socioeconomic spectrum. And we're all working together as a community of farmers, supporting each other. Some of them carpool their, in the geographic areas, they'll work to carpool their products, take turns of doing that. I like to say that we took the competition model from where a lot of them competed against each other at farmers markets. We replaced that with a cooperation model. And it's huge, you guys. It's huge. So in 2 weeks from today, we're hosting our annual farmer get-together. And I've got 6 or 8 chefs coming to provide food. You all are sending a delegation down to participate. The filmmaker who did Sustainable is going to begin filming the sequel to that. So we will start 2 weeks from Sunday on that. But I've got 140 some people coming together for dinner that night. And when we have that opportunity, and our chefs are wanting to feed them, the amount of potential that you all have to work together. We talk about, I don't tend to look behind to see what all the things that we've done. I just try to keep moving forward, right? But I have a lot of people that will say, would you just take a minute and see all the things that have accomplished? And what I'm going to tell you is what one or two people who are intentional, focused, and believe in something greater than themselves can do is incredible. Because where we started with, oh, we should do something with this cute little farm, has impacted so many people. And when I sit back here and listen to all of this that this community is putting together, and several thousand people, think of what each of you and what you as a collective group can do when you're focused, intentional, and passionate. That's who you are. And the impact that you can have is enormous. And we can't wait for that, to see the change that can happen.
I guess this is going to be my last question. See, he didn't get this stuff in advance, so he's on the real hot seat because this is not how either of us work, so it's just extemporaneous. But one of the things you touched on here is the power of these folks and all their friends and neighbors that are joining together to build this co-op can have. And I'm just wondering, what is different about the potential you see with this cooperative with Chicago Market, and saying, why is it that you and the farmers are excited for this? Or is it just, well, it's another great client? Or is there something really fundamentally different going on in the way we're working together?
It's huge. So let me put it in kind of real terms. We have these 2 trucks that deliver every week, and we have some really great accounts. I mean, high schools, senior centers, restaurants, not-for-profits, CSAs, blah, 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 and some smaller co-ops, downstate especially. What you and I have been working on is developing long-range goals and developing a plan that is executable, trying to understand what needs this community has and will have, and we're trying to match our group of farmers to that. They are all at the edge of their seat saying, just tell us what to grow and how much. And so to let you in just a pinch more, Down at the Farms is also applying for a $2.5 million grant through the state of Illinois for a local food promotion assistance grant, in which we have created 4 satellite hubs on our actual farmers' farms that will be distribution points for nearly 400 families for the next 2 years to receive a $100 to $150 box of free groceries. I'm using that system, that program, to help scale all of our farmers up, to get cash in their pockets, to leverage to get to you guys by next summer. It's a huge, huge thing. And all of this is coming together in the right time, in the right space, with the right intention. And the excitement that you all feel to have this happen is mirrored by our farm community. And Dan and Grant and Matthew have been touring around. I've been trying to take them to tons of farms and meet the farmers and hear their stories and hear what you have as a vision. And it is way exciting. And I can't begin to tell you how important what you're doing is to a greater community. What you're going to be able to bring not only from our farmers to this store, but out into this community is enormous. And just like you, we can't wait. So,
well, thank you so much, Mariano. I've been a bad timekeeper, but I really appreciate you sharing all that. I hope everybody is feeling more informed, but I'm going to give this over to Sonia so we can get some questions, and if you wouldn't mind to stay up here.
You bet.
Not sure where they want us, but that way people may have questions because they're all curious about where their food comes from.
Thank you for this opportunity, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all for your patience. I'm trying to get my phone to refresh so I can get these questions out here for you guys. So one of the questions I have here is show us some photos of the basement before and after, or maybe did you already do it and they missed the presentation?
We did put some things out, but we can put some more out on social media or put it on the website. That should be an easy matter to do. Hopefully you'll be pretty impressed, but we'll get those up as soon as we can.
Yeah, I do feel like some of these questions may have been answered in the presentation, but how long will the build-out take once all the financing is in place?
Okay, well, I'll hit that one. Once we have the financing and permits, which are imminent, the build will take 7 to 8 months. So we say it's 7 months to get the construction done, but we allow for 8 because there could be some unknown delay or something. So we've kind of built in a slush month, but really 7 months is what it takes. And then it takes about 4 weeks to get a store ready. So really get staff in, train, get product on the shelves, and get all the finishing details. So it's really about an 8-month process to go from principal construction to opening, right?
Okay. So the next question is, I am interested in learning more about how co-op thinks about minimizing packaging.
Ooh. Well, if somebody wants this one, I'll get it. Okay. So this is really important. And I was actually on the phone with one of our board members, John Law, just Friday about this because he's helping out with a lot of these sustainability questions. So we've got a couple of levels. One, yes, we want to minimize packaging. That includes how do you do more package-free goods? How do you select, when you've got all other things being equal, the items that are more responsible with the amount of packaging they use? How can you deal with folks like down at the farms and where you can build systems together that minimizes the amount of waste you're generating. So it's something we're thinking about. We're considering how we can do more reusable containers, what's feasible, because we still have to consider performance characteristics, but we're going to push as far as the technology will allow us to go without damaging our market. And when we can't just get rid of some of this disposed packaging outright, we want to make sure it's things that don't create persistent environmental toxins in the waste stream, and how we can get to be a zero waste business, and how we can make sure that the downstream effects are not any worse than they have to be. So when it can be regenerative, in thought it will be, and when sustainable is the best we can do, we're going to go for that. But we're taking that seriously.
Okay. So another question we have is, I don't fully understand the relationship between CM and the Uptown Farmers Market. Please elaborate on the connections.
I can take that one. So basically, the farmers market was born out of Chicago Market. So it is fully funded, or basically funded from Chicago Market, but we are managing it sort of as a separate entity. The thought process is, right now it is fully sort of managed by Chicago Market, but the thought is to eventually have that step off and be something that will continue in the community and be managed sort of independently. I think I see long-term involvement in the Chicago Market, whether that's funding or volunteers or management of some sort, but for all intents and purposes, we're kind of the same thing, but we are thinking towards the future to ensure that it can stay in the community and continue to be a part of the community. I know Dan has also talked about how we can actually work together as the store and the market to ensure that we have cross-programming and things like that, but we want to make sure that it continues to stay in the neighborhood, and I'm sure that Chicago Market will continue to be involved in the future. Does that answer the question?
So more about infra is what is it? What's the benefits and the membership rates, or the membership are? So, you know what, I'm thinking of Central Co-op, how we had memberships with other co-ops and things of that nature to try to get product into the store. So, Dan, do you want to expand upon that?
Sure. So this is Infra is technically it's incorporated as the Independent Natural Foods Retail Cooperative. So it's just like you're an owner of Chicago Market. Chicago Market, us, is an owner at Infra. So we're a voting owner in that cooperative. There are advantages on supply chain. So we've been able to work out a really favorable deal with KeHE, which is a locally based but nationally active distributor for a lot of our goods that we have to source outside of our local connections. And our rates there are substantially better than we would ever be able to achieve, even if we negotiated the best deal possible for an individual operator. There's a lot of deals that get negotiated. Sometimes they flow in and out, so they're not always permanent. But whether it's equipment, whether it's packaging supplies, it could be access to advertising. All these kind of things can get preferential rates and access. And on top of that, Infra also has robust training and professional development functionality that we get largely for free because the membership affords us that. And there's also other professional help that comes through Infra. So it's really more of a supply and support cooperative, and that's what we get. In terms of the paid-in capital, we do have a small amount of member capital, and we have annual dues, but there is no liability fund. There's not really an exorbitant amount of capital. For what we pay in, it's an incredibly robust return on investment. Hopefully that makes some sense.
And I wanted to just also add on to that, and this is just me interpreting the question, so I may be interpreting it incorrectly, but as a grocery store, we need to fill our shelves. And we have a beautiful produce department, and we know that Marty and his team is going to do a whole lot of work to get food that we're going to put on those shelves. Even in some other areas, like in our dairy case, we might have Kilgus Farmstead, providing milk that goes in our dairy case. So it's a packaged good that ends up on our shelves from the farms. But in addition to that, there's canned soup, there's paper towels, there's other stuff we're going to need, and having a group like Infra that works with distributors like KeHE, if you've seen KeHE trucks driving around the city, they're going to bring that center store stuff into our store. So we're working with groups like Infra that have distributors, that have other sources of products that will line our shelves. So Infra is also critical for that, because we can't just go to, I don't even know, like Annie's Organics and say, hey, can we buy some of your mac and cheese and put it on the shelf in our store? That goes through Infra, through KeHE. So there's things like that we have to always take partners like an Infra or some other kind of an organization to help us fill our shelves and get supplies. And it might be grocery bags that we use to bag groceries. It might be something that we put on our shelves to sell. So Infra is a partner of ours in that whole process too. By the way, before joining the board, I really knew nothing about how to run a grocery store, and I've learned a whole lot. So think about joining the board next year.
Yeah. So how are you expanding the market to reach, to attract new owners and avoid targeting the same people repeatedly?
Yeah, that is definitely a great question, and it's one that we ask ourselves a lot, actually. When you first start in co-ops, when Grant went to one of the very first meetings as owner number 3 before he was an owner, it was because some guy he knew mentioned something he wanted to do and was going to talk with their friends. And people in the community that were on this Facebook page all started to join. So it was this bubble of friends and people that they knew. And that has been what sustains co-ops in the very beginning. It's like, oh, tell a friend, tell another friend. So for us, the farmers market was not just a way to get fresh, healthy food to our community right away, since we knew the store was going to be a ways off. It was also a way to just get our name out in the community. And every day when I go, or every week when I go to the farmers market and I'm sitting at the farmers market table, somebody comes up and says, I've seen this sign, or I've seen this table here. What is Chicago Market? They don't, also like your previous question, don't understand what is the farmers market, what is Chicago Market. And so we talk to people and we're able to share information. Some of the outreach that we've done with community groups has also been really instrumental for us to take partners through the grant program and say, hey, you know people in the community, Black Ensemble Theater, that maybe we don't know, or Voice of the People, you've talked to people that maybe we don't know. So getting out into the community and doing things like that, we would love to even get even more contacts. So if there's other organizations with people that have some sort of an affinity to what we're trying to do, whether that's boosting the local economy, whether that's fresh, healthy food, whether that's having, a community hub, if there's people that you know that are interested in that, this is how we build our co-op, making those connections. So once we kind of like get all the connections that we know, we start looking for other ones. And that's the way new owners that come on board bring with them new connections and new people and new ways to connect. So connecting with local businesses is something that Dan's been doing a lot of, connecting with local community groups and organizations, as Kate has done with some of the community tables that we've had at the farmers market. There's all kinds of ways like that. But it's the biggest challenge. How do you get out of your bubble and just the people you talk to and expand out? So be thinking about that and bring to the board and bring to, or send us an email of contacts that you have that maybe haven't heard of us. Every day I talk to somebody that's like, Chicago Market, what's that? And they're like, oh, well, where do you live? Oh, on Magnolia and Wilson. I'm like, what? And you've never heard of Chicago Market. So there's plenty of people that don't know about us. Don't make assumptions that somebody's not interested, that they can't afford it. We have ways that they're not interested. Just reach out to people and let us know who we can also reach out to.
Thank you. Marty, this one is for you. What is the greatest threat to your group of farmers, and how can customers help?
Wow, that's a great question. Climate challenges are huge, but I will tell you that there's a lot of education that we do with around that. I would say the greatest challenge that most of our farms struggle with is infrastructure. Having enough cold storage on farm, having enough trucks to run product to the farm, to our warehouse, or to here. Continuing to build the infrastructure of putting in more hoop houses, equipment so that people aren't hand digging, 18,000 pounds of potatoes. Infrastructure is always the hardest, partly because most farmers tend to not try to go in debt, and I encourage our farmers to not go in debt, but to continue to build on their sales and put some back and build into their business. The infrastructure piece is probably easier to deal with than the climate issue, so maybe use that one.
Well, that's all the questions I pretty much have for everyone. If you choose to send additional questions, we'll be sure to get an answer out to you as soon as possible. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
This is always a fun slide to put together before you sit through the presentation, the key takeaways. So we're gonna put a couple things up on screen, but I have just a few things I've been writing down as we've been sitting through this. One of the key takeaways is always about participating. You're here. Thank you for participating. talk to us, send us questions, help us to understand what you want, and ask great questions like the one that was just asked to Marty, because it's amazing what can happen when you do participate and find a way to do that. Whether it is tell a friend that doesn't know about us what it is, if you want to volunteer, any level that you ever want to participate in, it really makes a difference to what we're building, because we're building this together. When we talk about volunteering and recruiting, again, jump in. Let's dive in together. Let's do these sorts of things. When we post something on social, repost it, like it, interact with it. You'd be amazed how much it makes a difference in the algorithms that are out there. The more that social media posts are touched, that's one way that we can get the message out to other people. And be proud of this. This is your market. Feel free to you could take one of our posts, you can make it your own, because it is yours. Doesn't mean that you just have to retweet it. Take some of the information, throw it out there. This is your market, this is your store, and we're doing this together. As Dan talked about before, the hard work is ahead of us. We certainly, Dan, have the right leader in you to take us there. And I think we have the right community surrounding you and the support system around you to make this a huge success. And at the end of the day, just remember that this is your market. We're doing this all together over the past 10 years. They say patience is a virtue, so I guess we're all virtuosos at this point. I know it takes a long time, but it really, really is going to be wonderful. We're building this beautiful thing that's going to make more than a difference of just a store. When you hear stories from people like Marty, and Marty, thank you again for coming here today. He's not just around the corner. I think he drove about 3.5 hours to get here for a little snippet, so thank you so much. And in fact, let's give him another round of applause for Marty. But when you hear stories from people like Marty, and then even more so, I love talking to you, Marty, but the farmers that you've introduced us to, you want to really be moved. Go talk to a farmer that tells you, well, if you open next year and you do what you're going to be able to do, my farm stays in business. I don't need a subsidy from the government then, because I'm going to be able to sell enough. I'm talking to my kids about them taking over the farm. We're building more than a store. We are building a vibrant food community, and you're all a part of it. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for everything that you do. We will be around if you have other questions. We'll be at Uptown Tap Room after that. I'd love to buy you a beer if you'd like to, but and James has a couple other announcements. But thank you so much for being here. James?
Yes, we have plenty of extra popcorn and brownies, so please take some home to your families. There's little baggies there if you want to take some brownie bites. Grab a couple bags of popcorn. And thank you so much for coming today.
James, I just realized one other thing that we need to do. I would love to just take a moment to thank Lee, Bob, who rolled off the board last year at the end of their term. And we have 2 board members here tonight, Donna and James, that have just been absolutely wonderful, and they've served for the past 3 years. They're not running again this time, but we would not be where we were today without you. So thank you so much, James. Thank you, Donna, and to Bob and Lee. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. They've been good.
All right, start asking questions. We'll be at the tables.